Nerdrotic.com.
Greetings, you over 838,000 practitioners of common sense and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Let's talk about superhero fatigue. Again, this may come as a bit of a shock to you, so you might want to prepare yourself. Blue Beetle was a massive flop. A film that could have been an average, forgettable superhero film, but thanks to its dogmatic adherence to the message, it was turned into forgettable hot garbage. I saw it last Friday, and the only thing I can remember is it's filled with representation. The third version of a DC superhero that is Latino, just in case you didn't catch it in any of the marketing, and he's up against an elderly woman and her angry pool boy, in a film that feels like Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Captain Marvel, of all things, put into a blender. Did I mention it also had representation? It also happens to be the first mainstream Latino superhero film. It's also the first mainstream Latino superhero film to be the second worst opening of the entire DCEU.
So there's that.
Barely beating out Wonder Woman 84, which had a day-and-date release on then HBO. By the way, can we stop giving Gal Gadot a pass?
Imagine there's no heaven.
That is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
Blue Beetle's performance issues at the box office are part of a bigger problem, and it just reaffirms that superhero fatigue is here. I can hear you now. It's not superhero fatigue. It's bad movie fatigue, something I used to believe, but not necessarily anymore, and we'll get to that. I guess the question we should ask is it DC or Marvel's fault? The answer is yes, but mostly it was the MCU that killed the superhero star. Don't believe me? Let's go to the veteran director of the Marvels, Nia DaCosta, who might have been unintentionally too honest, especially for a Disney Marvel director, when she pointed out that superhero fatigue is here, all while completely missing the point as to why it's here. I'm also going to shock you a second time, so again, prepare yourself. Nia DaCosta, the director of the Marvels, also stated that story is more important than representation.
What did you say?
Oh yeah, even the Marvels director admits superhero fatigue is real, but misses the point entirely. That she does. The Marvels is one of the upcoming movies set in the MCU, and while no one else does, it's director Nia DaCosta who had to delete her Twitter account when she got the gig for colorful tweets.
People?
Nia admits that superhero fatigue is a real issue. First of all, it kind of means that things are quite bad when a Marvel director says this. Second of all, right after that, DaCosta completely misses the point, just like others. So let's hear it. I think superhero fatigue absolutely exists. The biggest difference from the MCU movies to date is that the Marvels is really wacky and silly. Tell me you haven't watched any previous Marvel films without telling me you haven't watched any previous Marvel films. The worlds we go to in this movie are worlds unlike others you've seen in the MCU. Bright worlds that you haven't seen before. Really? Then she dropped this bomb. In terms of women-led films and women as superheroes in particular and excitement around that, I think it's really just about whether or not the movie's good. A keen insight into the room temperature IQ brain trust at Disney Marvel. I know it's hard to believe Disney repeating the same mistakes as Marvel Comics would end with the same results.
Weird.
Radically altering, subverting, perverting, and outright replacing characters with decades of development, all to sacrifice our beloved superheroes, our beloved storylines, our beloved Marvel and DC comics on the altar of agenda to the gods of the message. Prioritizing identity politics over good storytelling, the customers, and profits has crushed the comic industry. Doing the same in the MCU destroyed a money-printing franchise that has sucked the life out of the film industry and brought Hollywood to its knees. Now, I've heard whispers from inside of Disney Marvel that they realize they went a bit too far and they're starting to wonder what went wrong. Aside from referring to thousands of videos on this platform, quite a few in my library, or giving a detailed list of all the films and Disney Plus shows they have released since Endgame, considering their attention span, I just think it's better to show, not tell.
I had to follow Jonathan Majors, the most charismatic man alive.
Let's talk about that diversity and the representation.
Oh,
Here we go again.
We have 7 languages in this film. Oh my God, it's amazing. Get ready, people.
The diversity of such a diverse team.
Diverse, different.
Diversity.
For so long, we've seen superheroes that have looked like a small percentage of the world.
I wasn't super into superhero comics when I was a kid. I read a lot of like indie press stuff.
Different.
We have a lot of representation.
Diverse.
Where's that?
To feel represented.
So many people now feel so included in the MCU.
El niño sin amor. Por eso le dicen namor.
¿En serio?
El niño que creció sin amor. Namor.
We always say that is part of our growth and our global success.
Now, I've got to give credit where credit is due. It takes perseverance, determination, and just plain hard work to fail this badly. Now back to the Marvel's director, Nia DaCosta. It turns out maybe some of those whispers are telling the truth based on what she said. Will Captain Marvel 3 happen? MCU director addresses future prospects. In the latest issue of Total Film magazine, Nia DaCosta spoke about the possibility of more Captain Marvel adventures beyond the Marvels. I'll pitch Kevin 17 versions of what can happen to all these women and why and how, and that is that. And he's like, okay, girl, and sometimes I think I really got a movie going after this. And then other times I'm like, oh, they have this whole other plan that I'm not a part of. Welcome to Hollywood, Nia DaCosta, where you have been cast as a director and not hired. And yes, it's the latter. They're working on a whole other plan that you're not a part of. And I'm not entirely sure if Brie Larson is part of their plans, and neither is she.
I don't know. Does anyone want me to do it again?
As I've said from day one, the Marvels is doomed, but to be fair, so is the MCU and superhero films. What makes me say that? Well, let's see what's to come. From Sony Marvel, Kraven, a villain that everyone would love to see in a Spider-Man movie and no one wants to see in a solo film. Then there's Season 2 of Loki, a show that completely destroyed the Marvel Cinematic Universe, destroyed the character of Loki while replacing him with a female version of himself that he then falls in love with, and turned the Infinity Stones into paperweights. Then there's the release date I've had circled on my calendar multiple times because of all the delays, The Marvels. Formerly Captain Marvel 2, which is no longer a direct sequel to Captain Marvel because its titular character was demoted in her own sequel. Now it's a direct sequel to 3 shows you didn't watch: WandaVision and the 2 lowest rated shows on the D+ platform, Miss Marvel and Secret Invasion. There's no Brie Larson simp out there that can equal my enthusiasm for this film. It's going to be YouTube Christmas. Following that, on D+, there's Echo. Now, I know not too many people have heard about this one. A show that ticks every box for comic book fans. No, not high-stakes action and adventure. The female lead is an indigenous amputee who's deaf. A show Disney Marvel felt so strongly about after multiple reshoots that they tried to can it and couldn't. So instead, they're dropping it all at once on D+ to give it a leg up. And beyond that, sometime in 2024, there's Captain America 4, a movie without Captain America. And if that doesn't get you excited, this will. Agatha, the Coven of Chaos, formerly the Agatha Harkness Show, which will probably be about the patriarchy keeping some women down and Agatha rising as the misunderstood female antagonist that she is. Except after watching WandaVision, I can make an argument that she's the misunderstood female protagonist of that series. And following that, Tony Stark's replacement, Ironheart.
You need to be conscious of the way that you look. Walking around here with that ash on your head. Oh, it's funny. You look good.
I'm sure that'll get them running to the movie theaters and D+, and that's just the stuff we know they've already shot. Then down the line, there's the Thunderbolts, led by the 5'0" Florence Pugh as Black Widow, also featuring Ghost, the misunderstood female antagonist from The Wasp and Ant-Man.
Who?
You know, Ghost from The Wasp and Ant-Man.
No, not ringing any bells.
Okay, if that doesn't work for you, how about the Armor Wars, a classic Iron Man storyline from the comics without Iron Man? Instead, you get Rhodey, who's been impersonated by a female Skrull since Civil War.
Oh! Not a great plan.
Sure, there's Deadpool 3, which unfortunately had to stop shooting due to the strike and will probably be delayed till 2025. And I would like to remind everyone that it's being made by Disney Marvel.
Ooh.
But at least we could say at one time Marvel was pretty damn good, and that can't be said about DC, who, after their 4th abysmal flop in a row, still have one more to go, and Aquaman 2 will become the very first box office plop. So, back to the question of superhero fatigue. Well, There's no question, it's here. A key indicator of superhero fatigue is a film that's pretty well received that doesn't do well. I didn't like Blue Beetle, but a lot of people did, and it's a massive flop. I think a better example of a film that was well received that underperformed due to its massive budget is The Batman. Again, a lot of people liked it.
8 out of 10. I think this is 8 out of 10 movie.
Doesn't change the fact that they spent $200 million on this movie and were expecting $1 billion and didn't even get close, which contributed to Warner Brothers deciding to reboot the DCEU. On the Marvel side, there's Guardians 3, which did really well, but not as well as Guardians 2. Since Endgame was released, there has been 20 films released in theaters for Marvel and DC, and only 3 have hit $1 billion, and none of them were released by Disney. Add to that 8 abysmal shows Disney Marvel has released on D+, and a pretty good argument could be made that superhero fatigue is indeed here. What brought it on? Too many bad films. And now the director of the Marvels has openly admitted it, and that was after late last year, Bob Iger saying that Disney Marvel needs to focus on quality over quantity. You don't say. And now the end is near, and the MCU is about to face its final curtain. Unfortunately, it's taking the rest of the superheroes with them. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com.